So On Parole, the album was recorded in 1975 with Larry Wallace and Lucas Fox initially on drums, later overdubbed with Filthy Phil, all but one track. But anyway, recorded in 75 with legendary British musician Dave Edmunds doing the engineering. I hear you knocking, but you can't come in. He did that song. So this was for the United Artists for whom Lemmy was still under contract after being ousted from Hawkwind. It wasn't released until after Bomber had been released, when Motörhead were definitely, heading towards their absolute golden period of sort of 1980. Funnily enough, United Artists suddenly decided it'd be a good idea to release that album then, when Motörhead were already famous. At the time they recorded this album, and United Artists basically shelved it. They just fed them, as Lemmy called it, bullshit, and weeks went by and nothing happened. They'd recorded this album, but I don't know if they used it as a tax write-off or what. They just didn't know what to do with it. So, Lemmy moved fast to get the album recorded, because it was kicked out of Hawkwind in early summer 75, and he got Motörhead together very quickly, getting back in England. He always spoke very bullishly of it. He said he got back to England and straight away started looking for another band, and he said you can't let the grass go under your feet. The public are fickle and they forget about you, so we had to keep moving. Doug Smith, who managed Hawkwind, was told a slightly different story. Apparently Lemmy came back and he was really depressed. Hawkwind was his life, basically. He was the sort of the lone biker in Hawkwind. When he sang Silver Machine, he actually believed it, and all this sort of thing. And he apparently sort of moped around. He was back in London. He got back he had to get back, I think 2 or 3 bases on the plane. And he was moping around, but he was really upset about it. He was tearful and stuff. He was really down. And he was slipped some money every week to keep him going. And eventually, and they said, you got to start a new band, what you're going to call it. This is where Lemmy said, I was going to call it Bastard. But apparently Lemmy was like, I don't care what you call it Bastard. He was just like that. And eventually Doug Smith said the music paper was ringing up saying, what's Lemmy going to do? He was quite hot news, the thing of him being kicked out of Hawkwind, and he was probably the most high profile member of Hawkwind, even with Stacia dancing nude on stage. Lemmy's public recognition, recognisability, is that even the word? Anyway, but he was really known. So music paper was ringing Doug Smith up, or the management, saying, what's Lemmy up to now? Eventually Doug Smith thought, well, he's got to do something. So he told someone he's got a new band out, and it's called, or last track written for Hawkwind or Motörhead. It's called Motörhead. So he said he come up with the name for the band, and he said he deliberately rang Lemmy up sort of early in the morning, or early for Lemmy, it's probably like 10 o'clock or something, and said, your new band, by the way, is called Motörhead, because he knew Lemmy would still be like groggy and like, oh, okay, whatever, rather than, get irritable or angry about it. So yeah, they got his band together, and the guitarist Larry Wallace, who at the time was also in the Pink Fairies, and drummer Lucas Fox, who I don't think he'd done much of anything before, but he played the drums, and so he got that band together. So Larry Wallace was basically moonlighting. Him and Lemmy never really got on that well. Lemmy said we used to rub against each other in a very non-sexual manner. And there's a recording on YouTube of their first ever gig. Is it their first ever one? Or was it the Hammersmith one, the disastrous one? I think they're supporting Blue Oyster Cult. But anyway, yeah, I think it's Hammersmith. But the one that was when they got the world's best worst band and all this sort of thing. And you can hear people at the end going, get off, get off, get off, and stuff. And they muck about tuning. Lemmy just sounds out of it. He does some weird intro for Leaving Here. It just sounds like he can't be asked. Like, he just keeps saying, let's turn it up and all this sort of thing. They sounded knackered, and yeah, and it's not very good. The sound quality is obviously abysmal, but even so, like I say, at the end, the audience, who sound quite charitable towards them while they're asking about talking and trying to tune up and stuff. Admittedly, they didn't have the best sound, but still, at the end, they're just going, get off, get off, get off. You can hear them chanting, The fact that Lemmy kept going with all that after that is awesome. I suppose you have to. And it's right, but you know, at the time, prospects for them, despite that, they went in to record this album, and you know, they had like I say, Dave Edmunds engineering it, which was a pretty big thing. So they must have been quite, you know, hopeful for the future. And yeah, it's a good album. It's well mixed. It's kind of clean. It's a lot cleaner than like when they do the Watcher and stuff. It's kind of more laid back than Motörhead would play it in just a couple of years later. Certainly when they re-recorded it for the Motörhead, the self-titled album, which is much more sort of speed pub rock, you know, balls to the wall, whatever. This one is kind of, I mean, it's got a horn section on a Larry Wallace number called Fools, where he rants against the record companies. There's sung for you, record companies and agents out there or something. He does a spoken intro. And it's got a horn section. So later on, so Larry Wallace and Lemmy never got on. So, I mean, how fast had he got intro? And Larry Wallace said, I want another guitarist. So, you know, first of all, Filthy Phil. So what was it? Lucas Fox was trying to keep up with Lemmy's speed habit, and he couldn't. And he apparently trashed the studio one day, falling over or something. So he was out. And I've seen an interview with Lucas Fox recently, and he comes across as a really sound guy. He's like, I'm just glad to have contributed to the Motörhead legend in whatever way I did just at the early days, keep it going. You know, he seems a really cool guy. You know, he's doing well, so that's good. And but anyway, at the time he was kind of out because, you know, survival of the fittest and all that in that world. And in came Filthy Phil, the ex-Leeds United football hooligan, who overdubbed a load of his drums, or overdubbed Lucas Fox's drums. Because also when you listen to Lucas Fox playing live, those bootlegs I mentioned, he's definitely not the world's best drummer. Whereas Filthy Phil overdubbed the drums, which, as Lemmy said, is a real feat. And it really is to overdub drums. Apart from one track, I don't know which one, but Filthy Phil had been arrested for being drunk and disorderly. So he missed out on the recording session to overdub them. And then Larry was just very taken with Filthy Phil. And he told Lemmy, he said, what a horrible little CUNT. He's perfect. But then Larry was said, I want another guitarist. And Filthy Phil knew Fast Eddie. You know, he's a form. Filthy Phil was helping renovate a houseboat, and Fast Eddie was a foreman. I mean, just what world does that even work? And so he got Fast Eddie in, and then Larry Wallace turned up for one rehearsal, turned up really late, plugged in, played so loud no one else could hear what they're doing, and then he was gone, and that just left the classic three, as it were, you know, to carry it on. And that's kind of where this ends, you know. So that was the album out, but it got shelved and didn't get released till Motörhead were definitely getting successful. And for a long time, Lemmy wouldn't even talk of it as being a Motörhead album, but it's definitely part of the history, you know, that great history of Motörhead. And I quite like it. It's like I say, it's definitely mellower, but it's well mixed. It's well recorded. What came after, when they re-recorded the tracks a couple of years later, was really scruffy. And the energy was there and everything, but really scruffy compared to a sort of more mellow, well mixed version of 75. So worth checking out.